Good morning. Good to see everyone. I've been asked to just share a couple of things before we get started, particularly, really mostly, if you're new here and visiting us. First of all, we want to thank you for being here. But we are in the midst of pastoral transition. So unless you've been asleep for the last month, you know that. But if you're new, you might not know that. So fear not. You only get me temporarily. But seriously, just to kind of update you where we are in the process, there is a pastoral search team, our advisory board. We've spent some considerable time kind of putting together, I don't want to call it a job description, but kind of the parameters of what we're looking for in terms of our next leader and the next step in the journey. That part has kind of been completed, and we're really at the stage where we're going to begin to review and begin to look at actual candidates. So that's all progressing, and I'm excited to see, where God is moving next in terms of the next part of this church's journey. But just wanted to kind of give you an update there and let you know that's kind of where we are. All right? So we have, in light of that, been in a sermon series called The Best Is Yet to Come. And I thought if we're doing a sermon series called The Best Is Yet to Come, it might make sense that somewhere along the line in this sermon series to actually do a sermon titled, The Best Is Yet to Come. So that's where we're going to go today. And I want to focus in on this idea of the best is yet to come. So I was thinking this past week about the time that I first discovered that I was really, truly 100% married. As you can see, we haven't changed much over the years, although a lot has happened in that time. But really, this is a picture of the day that I got married, not the day that I first realized that I was 100% married. So this was, I think, sometime in August. Is that right, Roxanne? No, actually, I know the day. So this was we got married on August 2nd, and so my discovery day was about a month later, and it was the opening day of the NFL football season. So first of all, just to give you some background and context, my wife grew up in a die-hard, give it all for the Pittsburgh Steelers family. Yeah, that's what I, on the other hand, grew up in a die-hard, give it all Cleveland Browns family. Yeah, there we go, that's better. So that was obstacle number one to overcome, but in her kindness, she understood what a Browns fan I was. And so it was opening day, the Browns were on at 1 o'clock, we turned the game on. Now, we lived in a small apartment, and at that time, we had a 13-inch color Hitachi TV. It was state-of-the-art at that time, but so that's all we had to watch the game. So we watched the game, we make it through the game, and I left the room for, I don't know, to go to the bathroom, I go in the bedroom, I don't know. But anyway, I came back out, and I noticed that the channel had been changed to a Doris Day movie. And Roxanne had gone into another room. So I was like, that's funny. So I went back, I turned it back to the football game, the 4 o'clock football games, and Roxanne comes back in the room, she says, "What are you doing?" I was watching a movie. I was like, no, Roxanne, you don't understand. It's 4 o'clock. There's also a 4 o'clock game on that that we need to watch. And then I explained to her that the reason it was important to watch the 4 o'clock game is because whatever happened in that football game would indirectly have impact on what happened to the Browns and their playoff chances down the road. And all of that interweaves and is very, very important. And besides, that's what we've always done in my house, is watch the 1 o'clock game and the 4 o'clock game. Well, it didn't seem to be registering with her very well. So I thought to myself, you know what? This is the opportunity to really kind of lay out the foundations, the traditions, the roles of leadership in our marriage and our home, and what this is all going to look like. And so I obviously went Ephesians 5 on her. Wives, submit yourself to your husbands, right? And just explain to her who the leader in the home was and how all of this was going to work. And that was that. And that was really that. That was the day that I discovered I was 100% married. Now, by the way, that Doris Day movie was way better than I thought it was going to be. But the point is, we bring different perspectives to things, don't we? Different perception of things. Our perspective is different. And all of that makes a huge difference in many aspects and components of our life. And it truly does in what we are looking at, this idea that the best is yet to come. Because the reality is that statement, the best is yet to come, is only true if you believe it to be true. Because you could truly believe the best isn't yet to come, and that'll be true for you as well. So as we ask that question and delve into the idea of the best is yet to come, I thought it might be good to ask, how do we get there? How do I get myself to the place where, as I look at my life, as we look at our church, that I really have this belief and this attitude that the best truly is yet to come? And I think there's a process that we go through and some questions that we ask. So the first question that we would ask to determine if the best is yet to come is ask this question: where is your heart? Where is your heart? And to explore that, we're going to look in the 37th Psalm and also in the book of Matthew. So Psalm 37:4, David says this: "Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Now, that's a short one, so hang on to it, okay? And let's turn to Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21. And this is Jesus teaching. He says, "Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourself treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal." And then the key verse, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So let's hang on to those two things. Delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. And where your treasure is, there your heart is also. So as we ask this question, where is my heart? Our heart is kind of multifaceted, isn't it? So I can wear it on my sleeve. I can be hard-hearted. I can have a heart of stone. I can put all of my heart into something. My heart can be broken. All of these different facets to my heart. And the reason for that is our heart is the seat of all of our being and emotions. And so when we ask the question, where is your heart is really what you desire. So what do you desire? So I love that verse in the 37th Psalm, but I would prefer to read it a little bit differently. I would prefer to read it like this: blah, blah, blah and he will give you the desires of your heart. Blah, 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 and he will give you the desires of your heart. I'm thinking Lamborghini, Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes, right? That's not quite how it works. Because the reality is there's a causal relationship between the desires of your heart and delighting in the Lord. Because when we remove the blah, blah, blah and put in delight or trust in the Lord, it's talking about what is the foundation of where everything emanates from you. And if that foundation is that spiritual relationship, that delighting or that trusting in God, that becomes the base of operation for my life. And so my desires get conditioned by that. My desires are no longer self-focused where it's all inward and what I get out of everything, but my focus becomes more other focus because it's aligned with trusting and delighting in God, and that changes the desires of my heart. So it's not blah, blah, blah. It's causal. Delight myself in the Lord. He'll give me the desires of my heart. Now, what we really need to do is go from one end of the Bible to the other, because these verses just perfectly fit together and are interrelated. So, what Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, is true. But I got to tell you, the truth of that can either be a tremendous blessing in your life, or it can be a terrible curse. Because it's true either way. Where your treasure is, what you think about, what you dwell on, what the desires of your heart are, is where your heart will always be, good or bad. And Jesus' admonition is to line that up with delighting in the Lord, for the desires of your heart to be centered in not on things that are here and now and things that have to do with just what I want selfishly, but that are aligned with that foundational base of trusting or delighting in the Lord. So it makes me think of the guy who's just on a serious diet. He swore off all kinds of sweets, any kind of bad food like that, and the guy's doing great. I mean, he's accomplishing all of his goals, and one day he's at work. He gets to work before everyone else, and people start showing up. And as he's sitting at his desk, there's powdered sugar all over the front of him and jelly on the side of his mouth. And the people that work with him are like, oh, what happened? You were doing so good at this, and you were just like setting an example for everybody. And it was unbelievable. And he said, oh, you don't understand. He said, this was a God thing. He said, the way I go to work every morning, this morning, the road was closed and there was a detour sign. And the detour took me right in front of my favorite donut shop. I was like, so I prayed. I said, Lord, if you want me to have donuts today, let there be a space right in front of the donut shop. And he said, sure enough, fourth time around the block, there it was. And the point is, you go where the desires of your heart are. You're just going to go there. So what are the desires of your heart? If it starts there and we line that up, that's where we can begin to see that the best is yet to come. So that's the first thing. The second component to this is to not only ask where is your heart, but the second question is to ask is where is your head? So for that, we're going to turn to Luke chapter 14, verses 28 through 30 and read. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. This is Jesus speaking, by the way. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. So if where my heart is really what I desire, my head is what I design. And what has to happen in our lives is what starts here has to move here to my head. Because if it never moves from here to my head, then it's just an idle desire that pops up in my head every now and then, and nothing really ever becomes of it. So it needs to move from my heart to my head. And in my head is where I plan, where I set goals, where I strategize, where I put together a game plan and think about what it is that I'm going to do. That's what Jesus was talking about in the scripture. You don't just willy-nilly fly into things. Because the reality is, if you do, rarely does it ever turn out well. And for the best to truly come, it's got to move from my desire to my design, my heart to my head. So, guys, have you made the run yet to IKEA? Yeah. So, everything was really perfect when it was just located in Cincinnati. But when the plans came out that they were building an IKEA here, I got to tell you, my wife was really, really excited because she loves IKEA. And so once the IKEA was finished and built, first of all, you know you're in trouble when they name a street after it, right? And she would ask, she said, hey, Mike, do you want to go to IKEA? And I'd be like, no, I think I'll go ahead and get a root canal. But I'll just refer you back to the first story I told about the day that I discovered I was really married. Do you think I was going to IKEA at some point? Yes. So the day came. So in my picture, now I'd never been there, so my picture of IKEA was it's just going to be this big giant showroom that you could kind of mill around and that. No, not so much. So we get there, first of all, they're selling food and it's like a big party. But then when you walk into actually the IKEA part, the furniture part, it's not a big showroom, it's like a corn maze, right? Only it's a furniture maze. And once you get about a third of the way down there, there's no getting out, right? And I'm pretty sure there are children still today separated from their parents, somewhere lost in there, right? And, along the way, there's little display sections. And that my favorite section was the display section of one more thing that I don't need, right? But anyway, you make your way through the maze, get to the end of the maze, and then there's the whole process of where you pick stuff up. And that's another major operation that you go through. And so you get through all of it finally, and really your frustration is just beginning. Because I get home with the box, open it up, and there's like 92 parts for this little end table. And the instructions are in Japanese. So I just start winging it. And I get about halfway through the thing, and I'm looking for front panel J that connects to side panel I, and I can't find front panel J, and I'm looking all over for it, only to discover that front panel J I already used, and I put it on backwards, and it was 10 steps ago, so now I've got to undo everything for the last 10 steps. And let me just tell you that there have been a few tools in furniture parts that have gone flying across the Wehner living room. I'm not ashamed to say that. And what I really believe is this. If at the end of everything, at the end of our lives, if you don't make it to heaven, there is no hell. You're going to a giant IKEA. And if you've been really bad, you're going to be in the department that builds all the display furniture. when it doesn't move from here to here and I don't begin to put together a plan, it doesn't end well. But when I start here and my desires line up in the right way, and then I begin to formulate and put together a plan as to how my desires can come to fruition, that's when I begin to discover that the best is still yet to come. So, excuse me there. My ear's too big. So then the third thing that we ask is not just where is my heart and not just where is my head, but the third thing we ask is where are my hands? My hands. So in Colossians chapter 3, the Apostle Paul says this: whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward, it is the Lord Christ you are serving. Two things to key on here. Whatever, that means everything. Whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart. And you see, if my heart is what I desire and my head is what I design, my hands are what I do. So here's the key. If it doesn't move from here to here, nothing happens. And there are a lot of great plans, awesome things that have died up here. My Olympic gold medal is still up here. Right? All kinds of great plans have to move to my hands, to where I do something. And I think we get tripped up and caught up in understanding all of this in our lives. Because really, it doesn't matter if it's what I'm doing in terms of ministry in the church, or what I'm doing for employment or a job, or what I'm doing in my family. These principles hold true. It starts here, it goes here, it goes here. And I think sometimes in the church we look at the things that matter or that we do for God as things that are all within here. So it could be on Sunday, I help in the children's ministry, or I help make the coffee, or I'm going to volunteer for something like the giveaway at Thanksgiving, or something like that. And we define those kind of things as what we do for God. And then the rest of the week, when we go to work and we do this and we do that, that's what I do separate from God. That's my job. 70% of us hate our job. But that's not what the scripture says. What Paul is saying, whatever you do, not what you volunteer for here, what you do 40, 50, 60 hours a week over here, whatever you do it with all of your heart, as unto the Lord. Martin Luther said it this way: your vocation is holy. And so you may be like a plumber in Hilliard, who maybe you hate your job, I don't know. Maybe you like it okay. But you got to understand that you're the only plumber where you are who has the people around you that you get to influence and impact. You're the only one God has there. And if you understand that what you do there is holy, and you do it with all of your heart, God will use it to make a difference. I mean, the reality is, we're searching for a new pastor, right? And we're going to find, hopefully, a wonderful pastor and all of that. But really, the more and more time goes by and someone is the pastor, the less and less touch they have with the world out there. Do you know who gets to touch the world out there 50, 60 hours a week? That's you and me, right? And that's a holy endeavor. And so it really matters what starts here is my desire and goes here to my plan. I just got to take it out into action in what I do day in and day out. Because my hands are what I do. You know, it reminds me of the story of Oral Lee Brown. I think I perhaps have even shared it several years ago, but it was one of the most significant experiences, personal experiences in my life. So Oral Lee Brown grew up in the Delta in Mississippi, very, very poor home. And as she grew into, as she grew into a young lady, she ended up moving to California, to the Oakland, California area. And she started out as a librarian. And as a librarian, she was making $40,000 a year. But where she moved, the elementary school where she was rated perhaps the worst school system in America. And statistically, 75% of the people by ninth grade were going to drop out of school. That was just their ongoing statistics, a place of abject poverty. And she decided that she was going to do something about it. And so she went to a first grade class that had 23 kids in it. And she told them that if they would graduate from high school, she would fund their college education. And so Oral Lee Brown started setting aside $10,000 every year, 25% of what she made, to put a fund together for their education. Fast forward 12 years. Of the 23, 19 of them graduated high school. 18 of them graduated from college. And it started the Oral Lee Brown Foundation, which still does that good work today. But I first heard the story of Oral Lee Brown when I was at a sales convention for my company. Okay, so get this. This is a bunch of wild salespeople. And they told her story and introduced her, and out onto the stage walked Oral Lee Brown. And what happened next was one of the most coolest God moments ever. As we're sitting there, she spoke for just a couple of minutes. And quietly, without any prompting, someone a few rows back got up, walked up to the stage, and laid money at Oral Lee Brown's feet. And then it just started happening. There was silence in the room, and very quietly, people started getting up and walking up from all over the audience, laying money at Oral Lee Brown's feet. And when everything was said and done, we'd laid over $30,000 at her feet. And the point is, when it moves from here to here, and I really move it here, and really do it with all my heart, God uses it to make a difference. Where are your hands? Fourth thing, where are your hopes? Where are your hopes? So let's look all the way back in Genesis to the 15th chapter and read the first 6 verses. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abraham said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me, since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, you have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord came to him. This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count. Then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. And you see, if my heart is what I desire, my head is what I design, my hands are what I do, then my hopes are what I dream. My hopes are what I dream. See, God was trying to get Abram at that point, to dream, to hope. Abram was frustrated. Things that he had hoped for weren't happening. And God took him outside and said, look, count all those stars. That's how big I want you to dream, because that's what I'm going to do for you. And what God was trying to show Abram was that his hopes, his dreams, they mattered. They were important. God wanted to use them. And if you think about it, what we hope for is the fuel that keeps us moving forward. The problem is our hopes, our dreams get dashed. Things that I could see happening didn't. And sometimes our dreams get crushed by the people who love us most. And one of my favorite scenes in the movies is in the movie Rudy. You know, Rudy's dream was to play for Notre Dame, and he had no business having a dream like that, right? I mean, it wasn't good enough. And his dad just, the scene where his father just tells him he's crazy for doing that, and he's ruining his life, and why is he even thinking about doing that? And our dreams get crushed. Sometimes life for Abraham, his circumstances were not working out. Now, I got to tell you, starting a family at age 90 is a difficult thing to begin with, but he realized this wasn't working out, and the circumstances were crushing his hopes. And I'm just telling you, I understand our hopes get crushed, and in the midst of that, that's where God says, Abraham, step outside. Look at the sky. It's how big your dream can be, no matter where you are in the journey. You know, my favorite story, probably of all time, is the story of Monty. So Monty grew up in abject poverty. His father was an itinerant blacksmith, and he would move to a town, take on whatever work he could find as a blacksmith, and then they would just move to the next town. And when Monty was in grade school, his teacher gave an assignment. And the assignment was to write a paper about what your dream was. Monty was excited about it. He got home and he worked hard at it. And his dream was to own a huge horse ranch. And the centerpiece of that ranch was going to be a 4,000 square foot log ranch house. And he even drew pictures of it and just put his heart into it. Next day, he turned the paper in. He's all excited. The following day, the teacher handed the papers back out after grading them, and Monty couldn't wait. He was excited, and he got his paper, and when he looked at his paper, up the top was a big red F. He was devastated. Couldn't understand why. He had worked so hard at it. So he went up to the teacher after the class. He said, I don't understand why you gave me an F. I mean, I worked so hard on this, and I even drew the pictures and everything, and why did you give me an F? The teacher just looked at him and said, Monty, the reason I gave you an F is because that is unrealistic. That could never happen. Look at your situation, look at your circumstances. It's not realistic. But I'll tell you what I'll do. If you'll go home tonight, rewrite the paper, and write it so that it's more realistic, I'll regrade it for you and give you a new grade. So Monty went home. He thought long and hard about it. He actually talked it over with his father. The next day came, and he went up to the teacher and he said, listen, I've made a decision. He said, I've decided that you can keep your F. I'm going to keep my dream. The interesting thing is today, if you found yourself in San Ysidro, California, you'll find there a horse ranch owned by Monty Roberts, the centerpiece of which is a 4,000 square foot ranch house. And if you were to be invited inside, you would find hanging over the mantel a paper framed with a big red F. And the point is this: your dreams matter. They matter to God. They matter to those around you. Where are your hopes? I think what God would want us to understand is that if I continue to hope and continue to dream, that will be the fuel that God uses to convince us and bring to fruition the fact that the best truly is yet to come. God bless you.